Hello and welcome to Moneylife News and Views. I'm Debashis Basu. A few days ago, Joel Mokyr, Philip Aghion, and Peter Howitt were honored with the Sveriges Riksbank Prize in Economic Sciences, also called the Nobel Prize in Economics. Mokyr has argued that societies flourish when, among other things, they nurture, develop, and spread useful knowledge. Akion and Howard explain how such knowledge can be highly productive when it unleashes competition, destruction, and regeneration. Together, they explain why certain countries continue to grow for a very long period of time and why others do not prosper. This is a question that has bothered economists and historians and sociologists for years and decades and centuries together. And now we are beginning to get some sense of it. Some people say it is geography, some people say it's race, some people say it's institutionalization, whereas these three people talk about knowledge, destruction, and creation. Now, can India learn from the framework of economic progress proposed by these three people, mainly Joel Mokyr? India's policymakers have no shortage of economic blueprint. Yet, its per capita income remains a fraction of East Asia's, which is among the latest to have moved from poverty to richness. Economic progress can be measured in a variety of ways, but by all measures, India is growing far below its potential. A lot of progress has been the result of two happy accidents: India's software industry and massive remittances from non resident Indians. None of these two things have been the result of deliberate policy making by learning from what others have succeeded. Decades of haphazard actions have resulted in a mixed picture: pockets of excellence, a prosperous middle class, but poor education and joblessness among the masses, and 800 million people, on 60% of the total population, on government handouts. How can India break from the gentle trot of the last 75 years into a gallop? By focusing on what Joel Mokyr calls useful knowledge, the ability of a society to generate, connect, and diffuse new ideas that turn into economic progress. Europe's transformation in the 18th century, he contends, rested on three interlocking institutions: the generation of propositional knowledge, that is science and its theory; its translation into prescriptive knowledge, which is techniques and engineering; and a network that allowed ideas to circulate freely between the two. What are the recent examples of this? Modern China, which has built its own version of this at a breathtaking pace. Its R&D spending is above 2.5% of its GDP. Its patent filings outnumber those of any other country, and its universities now churn out hundreds and thousands of engineers and scientists each year. Behind these statistics lies something deeper: a dense network of connecting research institutes, industrial clusters of supply chain. The system is far from the liberal open model that Mokyr celebrated, but it functions in the same way, continuously generating and applying useful knowledge. For example, it's known that in China flying cars are only just beginning to take off and drone deliveries are becoming more common. But what is less known is that this year alone, 6 universities have established degree courses in low altitude technology and engineering of flying cars. In parallel, a complete and tightly knit supply chain is falling in place, which will help this subsector scale up very fast. This is exactly how China has scaled up in, in electric vehicles, in green energy, and so on and so forth. India's scientific elite is world class, yet the bridge between laboratory and factory floor, like we just saw in China, remains rickety. The country spends barely 0.7% of GDP on R&D, about one quarter of China's share, and most of that comes from the public sector. Indian universities are strong in teaching but weak in research. Industry prefers to import technology rather than adapt or develop it, and collaboration between the two remains sporadic. The result is an economy rich in human talent but poor in cumulative technical capability. Applying Mokyr's framework to India means recognizing that economic growth is, at heart, a knowledge system. The task is to build institutions that expand the stock of useful knowledge and the speed at which it circulates between teaching and building, in turn, using the fresh knowledge gained from building to teach better. In other words, a growing and improving stock of useful, codified, teachable knowledge. Such knowledge is especially transformative when it addresses pressing needs such as clean energy, urban transport, waste recycling, water management, affordable healthcare, and so on. For this, India has to enlarge the supply of propositional and technical knowledge, investing far more heavily in science and engineering education, including a broad network of technical universities and polytechnics. The government's current move to turn industrial training institutes into a public private partnership is a step in this direction. In 2022, the year for which the latest data is available, 36% of all Chinese undergraduates entrance picked an engineering degree. In Britain and America, the proportion hovers around 5%. In 2025, India produced about as many STEM graduates, that is, science, technology, engineering, and medicine, but most of them want to get into software services, which is the only opportunity available for science graduates, for engineering graduates. We produce far fewer at the postgraduate and doctoral levels where original research takes place. Equally crucial is to strengthen incentives for private R&D. At present, large companies devote only 0.2 to 0.3% of sales to research, far below global norms. A combination of tax incentives, targeted procurement, and public-private partnerships could change that. The Defense Research and Development Organization and Indian Space Research Organization have showed how public missions can spawn ecosystems of suppliers and engineers. The challenge is to replicate that model in civilian industries. Mokyr's second requirement is connections, linking science to practice. India's innovation system is still too compartmentalized. Academic research is rarely commercialized. Industrial clusters often operate without research institutions nearby. A more integrated model would pair universities with regional manufacturing hubs, promote joint appointments for scientists and engineers, and creating funding schemes that require collaboration between academia and industry. China's network of university linked science parks and Germany's Fraunhofer institutes offer instructive examples. In the 19th century, the British economist Alfred Marshall described economic progress as knowledge growing within knowledge. That phrase captures Mokyr's insights and India's predicament. The country has the talent, the entrepreneurial energy, and the domestic market size to grow rapidly. As Xi Jinping says about China, advantage of a large country economies is the internal circulation that is possible, and that applies to India also. India's consumption is very high. India is a large market in itself. What it lacks is a system that lets knowledge accumulate upon itself. How to achieve this? In practical terms, it calls for a lot of unglamorous grunt work, building institutions, incentives, and feedback mechanisms to continually refine the outcomes, all the while doing the unglamorous work of documentation, replication, and dissemination. This would be impossible without a culture that respects and celebrates useful knowledge. Now, that's quite a tall order given the state that the India is, what the political leadership is offering us, and how the bureaucracy has failed us. If you like this video, please do share and do subscribe to this channel. Thanks for watching.